trade with JE Flooring. I'm going to show you a simple technique at installing LVP in any room of your house. This is just a tiny room for me, but my technique, we can scale it out to any size room. If you get into like longer runs, it's a lot easier with help, but you can install this stuff in any room with just a couple of hand tools. I'm going to give you a run through of how I go about doing this. As far as the flooring material, it's rubber laminate, basically, luxury vinyl plank. It comes in rubber or cork material. It's waterproof, scratch resistant. It has the foam already installed on the back. It's not like the wood stuff where you'd have to put the foam down first. As far as your tools, I use a hammer, a knife, a pencil, and a pair of pliers to install this stuff. As far as the install, we'll get into that and we'll show you how to install this in any room of your house. The tile raises up here a little bit, so we have to fill in the floor to make it level. We're going to show you a little trick here to bring the floor up to the same height as the tile, and then we'll cut the door jambs and start getting to the floor. Alright, we got a piece of lawn board. It'll bring the floor up about 1/4 of an inch to match the top of the tile. This just kind of helps fill it up a little bit so that it's not going to break from moving up and down. I'll show you how to install this. we got the plywood filled up here. It extends from the tile out to the carpet and it brings the floor up to the level of the tile. The next step would be to cut the door jambs here so that the material can go underneath and gives it more of a finished look at your door jambs. There's a couple different ways to go about cutting the jambs. One of the ways we use is a hand saw. We usually use this when there's no power or it's not in reach of a plug very easily. So we use that, but not very often. The second option is Sonic Craft. It's an oscillating tool. Has a little blade that you can basically angle it in any direction if you want to be able to get into those tight spaces that a door jamb saw can't really get into. Plus it's a little handy tool that makes it simple and clean. The other technique that we're going to use today is a door jamb saw. It actually cuts them off pretty quick and it makes it a clean cut around the jamb. As far as cutting them, we're going to give these door jambs a couple of cuts and we'll get back into the floor. Alright, we got the door jambs cut, we got the wood cleared out, we got the wood cut back a little farther than the jambs so that the quarter round will cover, and we got the plywood nailed down. We got the other door jambs all cleaned out and all cut and everything ready to go. The next step is clean all the dust up and start laying the floor. Alright guys, I got all the dust cleaned up, the floor's ready to start going down. I just swept my pile of dirt about 2 foot from the wall. This way I was able to throw my trash and scraps ahead of me as I go. The next step is to lay out a few piles of floor to keep me going. Alright guys, we're going to start here with 3 pieces. We're going to cut them to 3 different sizes. It'll help set the stagger for the room so that the pieces interlock and stay together a lot better. We're going to start with a 1 footer, a 2 footer, and a full piece. And just kind of give it a nice little slice mark here. Bend it at the cut mark and it just snaps right off. Can be a little tough sometimes. Alright, now as you can see, we set our stagger as far as where the pieces are gonna lay. We're gonna butt off the front of this cabinet first. your cut pieces at the end will be your next starter pieces here. And then we take a second row, put these together. Alright, as you can see, we have a little tiny piece here to fill underneath the door jamb, so this piece is a little tricky. Here's a little trick that I do. I flip my piece around and line it up with the edge of the laminate over here, and then pick up your knife and then follow the edge of the laminate where it has the color. Come straight back. Stuff don't like to cut sometimes. And then we can put that underneath there, line it up. And I usually stay about 1/4 inch underneath the door jamb so that it'll cover. And then I line that up with the side of the laminate there. And I can draw basically a box out of the laminate where it'll cover under the door jamb. Make a couple of slice marks. And then take your pliers and you can just lightly bend the side back, score the foam, and we broke the little square out so that it'll go underneath the door jamb. And we have ourselves a tight fit. Now the trick is to lock this together. Alright guys, I have one of the pieces that I cut off of the first 3 pieces. I normally just cut like 1 foot off of the cut edge so that I can use this piece as a tapping block. This here I can just cut the tongue off, leave myself the whole plank, and now I can use this as a tapping block to kind of put my pieces together, and I'll show you a little trick as far as I go about doing this. I start in the middle, and work towards my outside edges, and I always try to wiggle the piece to make sure that we have about a little bit of a gap, about 1/4 inch on both sides. Start in the middle, I lift up and I push it underneath into the tongue the whole way down the room. Sometimes there's a little bit of sponginess in the floor here. So we take our tapping block and we just kind of stick that in the tongue, just go along and just kind of tap stuff and make sure that they're all lined up, ready to go, straight. We're on to the 3rd row. We got the little bit of the door jamb here to go under at the start of this 3rd row. We're going to put this down, figure out where our pieces go, make our cuts, so that everything goes underneath there. Size it up, make sure everything fits nicely. And as you can see, we started our stagger to keep stuff locked in a lot better. And we just start putting our rows together. This here, we just flip our piece back, we push it tight against the wall. Now, to keep our gap, we're going to cut right beside the tongue, not the top of the laminate. This way it gives us our gap around the wall. And then you can adjust it a little bit. Now to get your 3 rows together before we start the actual trick of getting the entire floor laid out. Take your tapping block, you can see that it sticks up a little bit. So we take our tapping block and just tap it in there. Make sure everything is laying flat before you continue, or it just will just come apart. You can see I barely even tap it and it just lays down right into its spot. Alright, we got our 3 rows down and we're right near the door jamb over here. We just have a little bit of cuts on this first piece and then we can float out about 3 rows here. Let's see if we can get a piece here that's not going to line up with the stagger too much. Okay, we got our piece cut for at the door jamb to make that a little easier. The next step is to set your stagger again with 3 rows. We got 3 different sizes here to help with that. And the next thing is we can literally just put pieces together and just start sliding them down till they reach the carpet. Cut your walls. Remember, you're only cutting right along the tongue, not along the top of the floor. This way, It gives you a room for expansion and contraction. Tap it in there. Pick up the back side, and you can slide it up and put it on top of the tongue of the other one. Your tapping block again. Alright, we slid our pile over onto the floor now so that we have the rest of the room to float out. We have a couple of cuts there around the door jamb there that we'll have to take care of to make sure everything fits under the jamb and looks flush. Once that's all taken care of, we can just start putting rows together and sliding them down. It'll help just keep stuff staggered. To size up your pieces, we push that all the way down to the wall as tight as we can. We push this piece on top as tight as we can here to the wall. And then there's the tongue that we cut right beside. We don't cut the top of the laminate, we cut the tongue, so it gives us room for expansion and contraction. As you can see, it'll give us that 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch around the wall, and then you can just slide the piece down and make your adjustment to give you a little bit of room going both directions. Another example, right beside the tongue. Gives you that 1/4 of an inch so you have a little bit of room to play. Now that we got those 3 rows done, we can put these 3 together, seeing that we're past the door jamb there. As you can see, we leave a little gap around the wall for expansion and contraction, and we have everything cut under the door jambs to make it look flush. Alright guys, we got the floor all cleared out here. We moved our pile back closer to where we swept at to give us a little more room. We moved our pile that we're working with here closer. The only thing left that we have to do is run these rows out here, and then we'll tap them all together once we get them built. Guys, we got this one heater vent here before we get to the back wall. I'm going to show you a little trick here as far as getting the heat vent cut out without using a tape measure. Slide this in there as best as you can, and then basically figure out where your sides are. And then you line this up with the edge of the, line that up with the edge of the last row, and then you take your tapping board that you cut the tongue off of, and you basically just line that up with the edge of the heater vent so it's flush, and it'll basically give you a line of where to, a line for where to cut at. I'll show you a little bit better in the next row because it'll be against the wall. Same concept at the heater vent. Put that all together. Now we got the heater vent basically cut out. Build the row. Alright, we're down to the last two rows. We got the one done. I have the two pieces from the very beginning that I cut off. I can use these as fillers so that we use up the floor instead of having to open up another box. Next row here, we're gonna lay this plank on top exactly even with the existing row. Then we're going to take another piece of flooring and use it as a guide to figure out our distance between the wall and the laminate, and that should give us a guide to fill in that area and still give us the 1/4 of an inch that we need for expansion and contraction. And that's how that's done. This here is where I just take the pry bar, kind of lift it up a little bit, try to tuck it down in there. The best I can. Use the pry bar to pull it into the wall or into the rail. Got the floor all laid, we got everything cleaned up and ready to go. The next step is to go around and put the quarter rounds around the wall. We leave a 1/4 of an inch gap around the wall so that there's room for expansion and contraction. The only thing you can do is either stick quarter round up, you can use shoe molding, or you can stick new baseboard up. This route we're just going to reuse the old baseboard and we're going to stick quarter round up to cover that cut edge. You can go a couple of different ways about cutting this stuff. They have a miter saw, usually makes a ton of a mess. We either have a miter box, but that usually takes a bit of work. Or we have a pair of these quarter round snips. They work really good for pine, not too well for oak, but this is what we're going to use. Alright, we snip one end off to make the inside corner. And then we gotta measure the wall to fill the inside gap. Alright, we mark our spot, and then you can just grab the snips. Make sure you hold it tight into the quarter round to create that nice 45. Slice it on down through there. Mock it up to your wall. Here we'll cut this one at a 45. Keep everything tight. At door jambs like this, I always cut a 22 instead of a 45. Just like that, all the quarter round is all cut in, ready to be stapled on. Alright guys, the next step is to go around the wall and staple the quarter round on. We usually try to stick a brad nail about every 1 foot. This way it actually holds it on the wall and doesn't make it wiggle at all. The next step after putting the quarter round on is going around and filling in all the nail holes and just kind of filling up your little corners that might have not been cut exactly perfect. The last remaining part to finishing up the job is putting down transition strips. There's multiple transition strips that can be used here. In this application, we're going to use a piece of flat metal. We don't normally use that. There is normally a piece of metal track that goes down and then a laminate cap that clicks into it. But the customer had recommended we just use a flat metal for now. So we're going to install gold flat metal at the doorways. As far as putting this stuff down, normally we try to gauge the holes to where they're even in the doorway, and so we put it up here and kind of gauge it close to where the holes are going to be even, and cut that down, and then we come over here and mock it up again, and cut this down. And it goes onto the carpet, goes down just like that. We're going to put a couple of nails in it. Alright guys, this is a wrap for this job. As you can see, this stuff's fairly easy to install on a couple of hand tools. With a little bit of time, you guys can install this in any room of your house. If you guys aren't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button, and we'll see you guys on the next install.